Well, according to President Trump, Iran has 7 days to comply with U.S. demands, or we will unleash hell on that country, including massive strikes on their desalination plants, energy infrastructure, which I guess is the way that you help the Iranians, by destroying their energy infrastructure. We want to help liberate the Iranians, so we'll destroy their way of living and their ability to get clean water. Okay. So we're watching a catastrophic escalation in Iran with President Trump under enormous pressure to commit U.S. forces to Israel's war. Those aren't my words. Those are this morning's words from Joe Kent, the former director of national counterterrorism, who resigned from this administration just a few weeks ago. This was his message this morning. Watch.
This week, President Trump will be under immense pressure to commit ground troops to the war in Iran. This would be a catastrophic escalation that will only result in more bloodshed and further escalate this disastrous war. It is critical that we, the people, have our voices heard. Contact the White House comment line, contact the congressional switchboard, ask for your representative, ask for your senators. Respectfully tell them that we do not support putting any boots on the ground in Iran. This is how we, the people, can have our voices heard. It's critical that we pray for peace, but it's also critical that we work towards peace. Respectfully contact your elected officials and let them know we, the people, do not support this war. Thank you. God bless.
Israeli media, including Channel 12 in Israel, is reporting Israel will not commit ground troops if the U.S. launches a ground invasion of Iran. They'll let Americans fight and die for Israel, of course. And just like, by the way, side note, Israel has never, in any conflict, ever committed troops to assist the United States, FYI.
Is that
yeah.
That's shocking when you think about that.
In fact, as Brandon Weichert reported, they actually have worked to undermine our forces in certain areas, but that's a whole separate animal that we can talk about. But Joe Kent is the former director of National Counterterrorism Center, who you, of course, saw there in the woods delivering that message. People in the chat room, Joe, were saying, why is he in the woods? Is that the only way he can go to be private right now and not have to have people lurking around you? Good to see you, Joe. Welcome back to the show. So your assessment, a catastrophic escalation. It seems that this message from President Trump this morning was delivered early enough, right before the markets opened, because it was set to be another disastrous day in the markets. President Trump loves to watch the stock market like it's a referendum on his personality in some capacity. But do you get the sense that that's true? His statement that we are working with the Iranians, that there is maybe a peace plan in place that we're working towards. Do you think that that's fake news?
Winning by not losing. So I think the Iranians right now, unless we change tactics, they're not going to take our diplomacy very seriously, especially when we put out massive threats like do this or else we'll start bombing civilian infrastructure. If we were serious about getting them to the table, we would restrain the Israelis, and that would show the Iranians that we are actually serious. Until we do that, I hope for the best. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think our diplomatic efforts will succeed. I think Trump would like to be able to get a peace deal. I truly believe that he believes that, but I know he is under a lot of pressure to commit ground forces. We saw Mark Levin and the guys from the different think tanks, American Enterprise Institute, go on Mark Levin's program this weekend and really pitch the case for a special operations style raid where we go in and we seize whatever's left of the uranium from Iran. And this is the problem, I think, with boots on the ground operations. If they go well, you're tempted to do more. If they go really badly and you lose people, then you have to double down and you have to stay to avenge the fallen, et cetera, and then you fall into this cycle. So I think we're in a very critical week here. That's why I put out that call to action this morning.
I want to ask you about the MAGA movement, because conservatives were screaming all last summer that a bombing campaign would be one and done and it would be over. And anyone saying there would be boots on the ground is being paranoid. Now watch Mark Levin over the weekend on Fox News making the case for boots on the ground.
Troops on the ground. He said no troops on the ground. I don't remember that in any campaign speech either. But why would we need troops on the ground? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and we wouldn't need 300,000 of them. It's this uranium, too. We've got to get the uranium. If it cannot be destroyed, if it cannot be altered, we got to get it. for the reason I just said. You can make dirty bombs, and over time you can still make sophisticated missiles. So you need to get to the uranium. That's why I'm reading in the paper, we're talking about the 82nd Airborne, we're talking about these various special forces and the various military services and so forth. He's not talking about sending regular army and infantry in by the hundreds of thousands. The men he's talking about, the units he's talking about, they are specialized. And you know what else? I remember from my days in the Reagan administration. Many of them are trained for a moment like this, to try and secure enriched uranium. Many have been trained for moments like this. I guess what I'm trying to say is we are in good hands. No, not with Allstate, but with President Trump, because he's a man with enormous intelligence, enormous common sense. He's not an ideologue. He doesn't run around.
All right, I don't want to hear any more of this. Enough of that guy.
Brown nosing.
What does he pretend to know, and can you address the claims exactly that there are these specialty forces who know exactly how to do this type of janissary move? Where are these? What does he mean? Is this all fluff?
This is not fluff. What Levin means is exactly what the Israeli lobby is telling him. Levin is very much a part of that ecosystem that I pointed out in my resignation letter, where he's getting talking points directly from the pro-Israel lobby in America, and probably in his case, directly from the Israelis themselves. And so if Levin is saying something this specific on his television program that the president has said that he's watching, the president is telling America to tune into, this is not Mark Levin coming up with this on his own. He's not falling back on his, time in the Reagan White House or whatever. He's getting talking points because these talking points behind closed doors are being briefed to the president with great detail and specificity. So this is why I say this week the president is going to be under immense pressure for an operation like this. If you do a cursory search of what the capabilities of our special operations forces are, we do have the counter weapons of mass destruction mission, which does involve going and seizing, uranium or nuclear weapons. So yeah, there's guys who are trained and have this well within their portfolio. The question is it necessary here in Iran? After Midnight Hammer, we completely destroyed their capability. And so now the Israelis are playing this game just like they did pre-Midnight Hammer, where they said, it's not just a nuclear weapon. That's not President Trump's red line, even though Trump had said his red line was Iran can have a nuclear weapon. They moved the red line and made it enrichment. Now that we bombed the enriched uranium and it's gone, now the Israelis are saying, well, that actually wasn't good enough. If they can even get any trace amount of this uranium, we have to go in and get it. Again, the Israelis could care less about the uranium itself. They want us committed with boots on the ground, because if we go in there with a very successful special operations mission and no one gets hurt, which would be my hope if we end up doing it, then they're going to tell President Trump, look how easy it was. You're so good at this. This is just like Venezuela. Let's just keep doing it until we can make the regime fall, because that's Israel's goal. But if we take losses, and I believe that we would, because Iran has shown a great deal of competency at defending their own borders, then the message would be, hey, we have to stay, we have to fight because we've lost troops. This is a trap that I really want to ensure that President Trump does not walk us into.
Do you believe that President Trump is fully in control, or is he acting as a puppet? That is to say, these people that surround him, that are feeding him this information, the people that are being then marginalized and pushed out of the White House inner circle, is he the one really running the show? I know there's people, certainly, I tend to agree with some of the guests that we've had on our show that he is not in control. Even Tucker Carlson flew there multiple times, as you know, and was trying to convince him of stopping this. And Tucker suggested that Trump was really, his hands were tied. His hands were tied. By whom? It's pretty remarkable that his hands are tied. Do you get the sense that his hands are tied?
I understand where that mentality, that idea comes from. I mean, I've been around President Trump enough, and I have supported the man for long enough that everything he's doing right now with regards to this war in Iran seems very much out of characteristic. A big reason why I had to resign is because a lot of us who were against these types of actions, or at least wanted to offer him alternative courses of action, we were boxed out and we weren't allowed to really express our dissent. And now the administration will come and say,
can you just clarify that? Because many of us have speculated as to who was boxing you out. How do you get boxed out of telling the president of the United States that we shouldn't go to war, like you, Tulsi Gabbard, and others? we should not do this. Who is boxing you out? Was it, can you name names?
At the end of the day, there just wasn't a lot of discussion in this last iteration. In the 12-day war and then in Midnight Hammer, there was a very deliberate national security process. There was a deputies committee process. There was robust debate. As we moved closer and closer to this one, the key meetings just didn't happen. So it really wasn't a matter of like, no, you guys can't come in the room. It was a matter of next thing you know, we literally are moving forces towards Iran, and then the attack is launched. I think some of the pictures that were released the night of the actual operation, where you had a small circle down there of President Trump and Mar-a-Lago and kind of everybody else back at the White House, I think those paint actually a pretty accurate picture. So
wow.
The president should have I believe that President Trump is still intelligent enough to make deliberate decisions. Now, the question is, who does he have around him? I have found everything that's taken place basically since Midnight Hammer on to be out of characteristic for him. And I'm hoping the pushback that he's seeing from the MAGA base, from the people who elected him, who he has a very personal connection with, I'm hoping that he sees and feels that we are against this war, and he reflects on why we're against the war and where we're at right now, because he knows we're not in a good spot. He knows what's taking place in the Straits of Hormuz, the effects that's having on the world energy market, the effect that's having here, the price of the pump. He knows that is a very bad thing. And so I think he needs to show all of us that he still very much is in control, and he can do a very Trumpian move, and he can flip the script. He can flip the table. He can restrain the Israelis. He can get the Iranians to the negotiating table. If I didn't think he still had that much agency, I'd be saying so, and I wouldn't be lobbying so hard. I still think he has the agency. I think he's gotten very, very bad advice, and this speaks to the amount of influence from the Israel lobby and how much influence they have over the media ecosystem, and just the amount of access, frankly, that we've given to Israeli officials over the years.
Right, but it's really hard. I can understand it as an excuse for why President Trump would be the negative copy of what he promised on the campaign trail, which was the answer to the neocons. So maybe that's understandable, but I can't accept it as an excuse when he has human lives in his control. And given how often Israeli-fed intelligence has been ill-motivated and wrong, we can no longer offer that excuse. So what do we do with that intellectually? We have to draw the conclusion that he's either a puppet or he's a clone or I'm going to all kinds of crazy places because this is exactly what he said on Inauguration Day. I will be remembered for the wars that we never get into.
Yeah, it's maddening, actually. If you think about it too much, you can kind of try. I definitely have had a lot of time to think, and you sort of end up in this cycle of like, why is he doing this? For me right now, I'm focused on trying to snap him out of this, however you want to put it, so that he takes a hard look at where we're at, and he realizes that he has the agency, and whatever pressure that he may feel that he's under internally inside the White House or in like the political world, there's still 77 million people who voted for him in this country that gave him the popular vote in the Electoral College. And if he flips the script right now, they're all going to have his back. The donors will be mad. The Israel lobby will be mad. But I think him understanding that like he won an overwhelming landslide, he had the greatest comeback story ever. He can flip the script on this. As to why he's done this drastic 180, I don't fully know. I was there for a lot of it, and I think that the level of access and comfort we've given the Israelis, I think that is probably the driving factor behind why we're in this situation.
So are you saying kind of categorically that Israel is running the show here?
They're at least in the lead. I mean, really, even if you listen to Marco Rubio's initial statements, and it took him several days to kind of walk this one back, and then, you heard the president basically say, the president said it several times, we had to attack Iran because the Israelis were going to attack, and then we'd get attacked. So really, the Israelis drove this entire timeline. And I don't think that's even debatable, just based on what the key decision makers have said. And then also in terms of every time that President Trump attempts to move us to a place where we can negotiate, the Israelis come in and they kill negotiators, they kill members of the government, they like specifically bomb the infrastructure that President Trump says that we're not going to bomb anymore, basically to show the Iranians that like we're not negotiating in good faith, or that it really doesn't matter what we say because the Israelis are just going to jump in and do whatever they want. And as much as the Israelis have gone against us publicly, we still have yet to restrain them in any meaningful way. I know there's been some reports here and there that, the vice president or somebody else called and yelled at Bibi. But until we actually take away some of the support that we're giving to the Israelis, their behavior will not change, because they basically think that any, kind of talking to that we give them is just hollow, because it truly is. So, it sounds bombastic when you say, oh, the Israelis are completely in control of this. But when you take just a step back and you look at the facts, how we got in the war and then the pace of the war so far, the Israelis are really in the driver's seat. They're not our co-equal. They're not our ally. They are driving this entire war, unfortunately. And we're the ones that are paying for it, which is even a bigger slap in the face.
Do you think it's a good cop, bad cop play, though? Like, the U.S. we know that this is going to happen. We know that they're going to bomb the infrastructure, the negotiators that we're trying to meet with, and we're just playing good cop while they play bad cop?
I think sometimes we tell ourselves that to make ourselves feel better. But I know for a fact that, in general, I've been in the military. I was in the military for 20 plus years. Americans, we do everything we can not to bomb civilian infrastructure. And when we do, there's a process for it. We make sure that people are held accountable. We make sure that we don't do it again. So us going to war with a partner like the Israelis, and not knowing how they're going to fight, I just think is ridiculous. We know how they're going to fight. The problem is we lack the will to actually restrain them. And so we might tell ourselves okay, yeah, we'll let the Israelis play a little bit rough because we won't play a little bit rough. But at the end of the day, when the Israelis playing a little bit rough or conducting war how they conduct it, if that stands in the way of our strategic objectives, then again, I'm back to what are we even doing here? And this was some of my frustrations. I could kind of care less about, what religion the government of Israel is or any of that type of stuff. The foreign government driving the way that we fight our war and how we fight our war and being the deciding factor in whether or not we go to war, that's my major issue.
Given your title as counterterrorism, if there is a foreign nation using any influence against our leaders to exact a means to an end,
right?
That's kind of terrorism, right? And so it would seem to me that our war is being led by terrorists, and we are the least out guns for them. Have you ever seen someone say this blackmail is terrorism or this influence is terrorism?
Many of us have definitely pointed out that it's a counterintelligence issue, that the Israelis just have way too much access to our innermost secrets. They are able to influence our decision makers way more than they should be able to. How the political world bleeds over into the intelligence world and how much access the Israelis have bought, that is brought up quite a bit within the intelligence community. Now, usually you're told to be quiet and don't talk about that. And you can talk about it with the guys that feel the same way you do. It's one of those almost open secrets where most people won't say it, but if you say it, most people in the intelligence community are oh yeah, we got it. This is we're kind of getting hosed here by the Israelis, and this is a ridiculous relationship.
So then let's pretend that we're really worried about Assad when really it's Netanyahu. That's maddening, because I am far less worried about what's happening in, say, Yemen than I am about the influence of the Israeli government, given where we are right now. And so clearly there are colleagues amongst you who felt that way too, and were constrained despite the best intentions.
Yeah, for decades. I mean, really, I had a mentor probably 20 plus years ago who told me don't trust the Israelis. And I was oh, that's weird. Why? I thought the Israelis were our best friends. So this has been well known for a very long time. Again, the Israelis just the way that they've been able to entrench themselves, obviously through money, through the media, and then just the amount of influence that we give them, because they are a competent intelligence service. That's another part of it. The Middle East is hard. It's hard for Americans to operate in the Middle East. And the Israelis in many ways became almost the easy button for intelligence collection, because they're from the region. They speak the languages. They will feed us intelligence. And a lot of us who spend a lot of time in the Middle East, we would eventually start looking at some of this intelligence and say man, probably about half of this is good. The other half of it is definitely trying to influence our decision making, so we should be wary of it. But it takes a long time to kind of come to those conclusions. And so again, just the amount of influence the Israelis have, that is a major issue that we have to address to get the sovereignty of our nation back.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken to CIA whistleblowers who said that it was well known within the CIA that you never meet with the Israelis in CIA headquarters or a CIA building. It always has to be an off-site because we can't trust them at all. Those aren't my words. That's from the CIA. Joe, I want to ask you about President Trump and the rumors or the suggestion that that the Iranians were trying to assassinate him. According to the sources we've spoken to, there's no evidence of that. He has been fed that information, and I guess, where did that information come from? Did it come from Israel? And did you see at your time, looking at this intelligence, that there was any Iranian cell that was trying to assassinate President Trump? He seems to believe that.
This one's a bit complicated because after Trump ordered the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, we killed Soleimani, the Iranians publicly said, hey, we're going to get revenge for Qasem Soleimani. So they basically put out a hit on a series of U.S. officials who were in power at the time, to include President Trump. And the Iranians did lots of, I would say, threatening online about going after President Trump. There was one individual so far that we've caught who was in communication with the Israelis, a guy named Asif Mershant. He was just sentenced recently. He came to America. He was, as far as I know, he was indeed contacted in some way, shape, or form by the Iranians. He came here with the intention of killing President Trump. He obviously, we heard that he was coming here, so the FBI was all over this guy. They threw a confidential source at him, and together the two of them planned a sniper assassination against President Trump. They arrest Mershant, and then 2 days later, Crooks tries to shoot President Trump. So my question has always been, did we find any linkage between Mershant and between Crooks? The FBI was very guarded about that, and didn't want, in my view, did not want to run down all the possible links between Crooks and between Mershant, which is odd because Trump has been led to believe that Iran took a shot at him in Butler, and so far there's actually no proof of that. And I think we should answer that question once and for all. Was anyone that Mershant was dealing with, were they at all linked to Crooks or to Butler? Because everything around Crooks has been kind of an enigma. Initially, he got killed and he had no online presence. We couldn't find out anything about him. But then almost a year or 2 years later, Tucker Carlson's investigative journalist finds Thomas Crooks's online persona, and he's communicating with people overseas. There's obviously a lot more investigative research that needs to be done there.
Right.
And did you get any pushback on trying to get the answers to that, or?
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, it was basically just like, no, case closed. There's nothing to see here. Crooks is dead. We talked about getting into his devices. At first, we heard his devices were locked, and then obviously Tucker found what he found. So there was obviously a lot online for us to look at. And again, President Trump has been led to believe that Iran tried to kill him at some point. I'm assuming it's there in Butler. We should see if there's any linkage between Mershant, that plot that the FBI seemed to have under pretty tight lock and key that we do believe came from the Iranians, and what took place in Butler.
I've watched a lot of your interviews in the last few days, and it seems to me like you have very legitimate questions aligned with the questions we've been asking for about a year now. And the government treats you like a toddler. Like, no, honey, you can't put the key in the outlet. Come over here and play with these blocks instead. So there's got to be something in what they did let you do, because there's definitely something in what you weren't allowed to do. What were they encouraging you to do then?
Really, like, just basic counterterrorism work, which is fine. We need to do counterterrorism work. We have a lot of counterterrorism threats. Obviously, what's taking place in Syria has made quite the opportunity for ISIS or some version of ISIS to reconstitute. Same thing, Yemen, out in the eastern part of Yemen, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is back and active. Southern border, we had a lot of threats there as well. The Biden administration had 4 years of open borders. So one of the biggest lifts that we had was trying to figure out who came into our country over the last 4 years. I publicly testified that we had identified around 18,000 known suspected terrorists who had potentially gained access to America under the previous administration. And so we were working diligently with DHS and ICE to attempt to run down all those people. But the more we dug into the information about what took place in the previous 4 years, the more I realized that almost all the bookkeeping was pretty incomplete, and we just simply didn't have any idea who was in our country. So I think we're we kind of have the perfect storm. There's a lot of potential right now for chaos within our own borders because of the open borders policy of the previous administration.
So
I just want to say, if that came off condescending at all, I didn't mean it. I meant you were asking legitimate questions and being shut down. I didn't mean to infantilize your work at all.
I certainly felt that way some days, so I totally get it.
Okay. I don't mean to condescend. Sometimes
no, it's a great question. I mean, I was thinking that same thing when you're not invited to certain meetings, or meetings are taking place and they don't want you there because you guys are the dissenting voice and all of that. It seems appropriate that they would say, hey, just focus on domestic terrorism. That's why you're here. Don't ask questions about Iran. Don't ask questions about Israel. When you left, did you talk to, to tell about personal conversations, but Tulsi Gabbard, there was quite a call online for her to resign in protest as well. I don't know if you've spoken about that, if you've spoken to her about that, but what's your sense of the internet's response to Tulsi Gabbard still being in that position?
Tulsi's a friend, and I think people who have supported Tulsi in the past, she's still attempting to do all the right things. She is. She's doing the best that she can. And it's a hard job that she has, overseeing all the intelligence community. Does not make you popular any day in Washington, D.C. The very role of the director of national intelligence, you're kind of looking over everyone's shoulder and checking their homework, and frequently that leads to just a lot of what I think is healthy tension. There should be these healthy debates. So, look, D.N.I. Gabbard, I think, is working hard behind the scenes. And if people knew what she was attempting to accomplish, I think they'd be proud to support her still.
Seems like, though, they weren't listening to her. I mean, she's testified before Congress that Iran was not constituting, nuclear weapons, that the assessment of the intelligence agencies, and that just fell on deaf ears by not only Congress, but it seems like the administration that she works for, no?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the president has the prerogative. He can make whatever decision he wants to make. And this is a big reason why I had to leave, because as I said in my resignation letter, like, Iran did not pose an imminent threat to us. Iran has done bad things in the past. I've fought Iranian proxies, spent a lot of time doing it. I have no problem doing that. However, in terms of like us getting involved in another regime change war, when Iran was actively at the negotiating table, when President Trump and the Iranians agreed on a starting point, and the Iranians had really strictly observed an escalatory ladder to not attack us for the first basically over a year of the president's administration, or right around a year of the president's administration, I thought we were in a good spot to do that. But the fact that we had this agenda come in, which wasn't based on intelligence, it was based on what the Israelis wanted. That's where I had to part ways, because I did not want to be a part of that anymore.
Well, you've been a big focus. You're certainly a big focus in our chat room right now. Many people say, I love this guy. Others saying Joe is a psyop. So we're going to get to the bottom of all of that. Whitney Webb clarifying her comments about you today. So let's just be an open book here. We're going to get to all of that. We're not afraid to ask questions here. Is Joe Kent controlled opposition? Is his resignation part of a deeper state plan to basically have Peter Thiel, his Palantir buddies running the show, install J.D. Vance as president of the United States under the auspices that we are anti-war, but then we get to usher in a surveillance state which controls all of us? That's what Catherine Austin Fitts believes, not the Joe Kent piece of the story, but she believes that is the goal, that is the multi-stage goal, and that President Trump is merely a puppet in this entire game. So Joe Kent is back with us now to talk all about that. So let's just take these piece by piece, Joe, and obviously a lot of people, I think, when you popped up and offered your resignation letter, there are a lot of people who've watched the intelligence community for years, people who've been former, members of the military, who've said this is a psyop, because suddenly when someone comes riding in on a white horse, pops up out of nowhere with a resignation letter to support your position, people sort of rally around this guy. Joe is now the savior.
Well, let's point out this is your second time on Redacted, so you're not out of nowhere. So.
No, I'm saying, but suddenly we get to hear from Joe in protest of the Iranian war, and for a lot of people that was like, oh, this is the salve to the MAGA problem right now. Like, we do not want boots on the ground. Joe is the guy. How do you respond to the psyop piece of this?
I think people should stay skeptical. I appreciate that, actually. I mean, we're in an era of deception, unfortunately. So I get it. I think if people observe me and they've known me for a couple of years now, they'll see that that's just simply not the case. Took a a fair amount of risk, I think, coming out the way I did. So yeah, that's kind of all I can say. I haven't read too many of the conspiracies, but I totally understand the skepticism. I think it's healthy and good.
I mean, if I were going to run an extension of the neocon movement, I probably would do something like this. You have a very impressive resume.
Serve your country.
Yes, you are well spoken. Clayton gets a little jealous, but you're a handsome dude. You can take to the campaign trail. I'm sorry, honey.
I can handle it.
And so I'm sure we have seen people of that ilk put into this role for a specific purpose. So you can't blame people for seeing it this way, right?
Not at all. No. I mean, I think people questioning everything is good. Please do. I dig into people's finances too. I mean, that's a big thing. I ran for office twice before unsuccessfully. I think if people look at, where I got my funding for those two runs, they'll kind of see that I was supported by mostly small dollar donors. I think almost all small dollar donors. So yeah, I think the skepticism I think is good though. No pushback on skepticism.
But do you have continued political aspirations? Will you run again?
No, I mean, I've ran for Congress unsuccessfully twice. I hate asking people for money, my least favorite thing in the world. If I felt called to do it, I guess, I just don't know. It would have to be something, I guess not, because I moved states again, so I don't think I'd run for the House or the Senate. I think the best service I can do right now is stay focused on this issue because I can provide a lot of insight and clarity. And I do think there's an ever-growing movement of folks on the left and on the right. You have a lot of them on your show who are anti-war, who want foreign influence out of our government, who want to get the deep state under control. I can support presidents in that role. I think we need people that understand how the IC works, that can go in day one of the government and actually, force the people's will on the IC, on the military industrial complex. That's how I'd prefer to serve. Running for office, I'm glad I did it, but it is not a fun experience. I would much rather fight kind of in the national security realm.
Okay, but I'm going to call you back if I see your name in one of those AIPAC Trekker Congress type things. Then we're gonna revisit this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. When I ran for Congress, people can look it up. I had folks donate in AIPAC's name. So I think I had a couple thousand from something that was AIPAC affiliated. And I'm not like super anti-Israel either. Like I'm anti-Israel directing our foreign policy. So I talk to Republican Jewish groups, those types of things. But yeah, seeing how AIPAC gets their hooks into people, I would definitely resist all of that if I ever did end up running again.
So I mentioned Whitney Webb, friend of the show, Whitney Webb, one of the best investigative journalists, I think, in the world. She was on Jimmy Dore's show, I think, the other day. She said she wasn't really prepared for the question about Joe Kent. And so she came out today and clarified what she said. And to be clear, I don't think she said that in that interview.
No, she said, you have to be skeptical. We don't know what the conflicts are. And this is a playbook that would be clever for an extension of the neocons. And sort of the way I asked the question.
So she responded today and kind of put this out here, and I want to take it. She says, I got a lot of shit for saying why I don't trust the Joe Kent trajectory. And why I was obviously put on the spot about it could have been more articulate. I think the points I brought up are very reasonable. If the counter-terror spook resigns to amplify rhetoric, even if it's mostly accurate, and then the current administration defines as indicative of domestic terrorism, and that spook was previously also funded by Peter Thiel, the co-founder and chairman of the intelligence contractor working to establish domestic terror pre-crime in the United States, I think it's fair to be skeptical of him. Of course, the Peter Thiel Palantir concerns, Joe, are at the heart of this, right? That we need to separate ourselves from what's going on with Iran, but now we need the Technate in the United States, part of this greater North American project that Pete Hegseth today announced, which I couldn't believe he announced that. So we're going to take control of North America, essentially. We need this massive surveillance state, control through central bank digital currencies, a digital ID, and that maybe perhaps Joe Kent is at the heart of this Peter Thiel Technate Palantir surveillance state. What do you say about the Palantir Peter Thiel connection?
So when I ran for Congress, I think Peter Thiel donated to my campaign in 2022, but it was a direct donation to my campaign. So it couldn't have been more than, I think, just shy of $6,000. And he didn't donate to me again when I ran the second time. And then I didn't get any Peter Thiel super PAC money. So like Peter Thiel funding me, people can look that up, obviously check everything I'm saying. The money's just not there unless you're talking about something that was less than $6,000 4 years ago. But again, I appreciate the skepticism. I think that's good, and I think that's healthy. But yeah, I don't really have much relationship with Peter Thiel. Being in the government for as long as I have been, I've used Palantir for quite some time. And Palantir is coming up with like some impressive AI stuff. Now, I don't think it should be used here on American citizens. And I think we have to be wary in times of conflict, in times of war. It's really easy for our civil liberties to be eroded. And with how fast the technology moves nowadays, we should be on guard and we should be aware of that. And we should fight that with everything that we can.
So did you fight it? I just want to follow up on that. Okay. So that's very important. And as Whitney Webb continued in her piece, she said Trump previously considered making a pre-crime program using AI to flag the social media accounts of Americans who displayed warning signs of violence or mental illness. Its main advocate was Jared Kushner. So within the administration, you were in the administration, was there pushback against this Palantir surveillance of the United States from internally, or was it pretty quiet?
A lot of pushback internally.
There was
a lot of pushback. There's a lot of advocates for civil liberties, and I think there was some pretty healthy debates going on about that. I don't think that concept is being advanced to my knowledge. Now, again, wars and the way things are accelerating, but there was definitely folks who I think in the administration would support something like that. So again, this is where I think we need people to pay attention. So I appreciate Whitney Webb's scrutiny and calling attention to it.
Something that Israeli leaders have said many times is that the freedom of speech clause in our Constitution is a problem inside America, that, unrestricted social media is a problem. They are the only ally who has dared to tell us how to live. Can you imagine? Even Zelensky and all of his idiotic hubris would not dare to try to shut down opposition to supporting Ukraine. And then on cue, we see President Trump releasing expanding definitions of domestic terrorism, which there really cannot be a domestic terrorist because that means anyone who speaks against the government can. But the Trump administration uses that term a lot, and it gives me a lot of heartache because we are supposed to be completely free to criticize the government. And so you're saying there was pushback at surveillance, but that term at all, is that something that is being codified in intelligence against Americans?
The term domestic terrorist?
Yeah.
Domestic terrorism?
It's in press releases. It's everywhere. We're not really supposed to have that. That's not really a thing.
Right. I think it, as far as I know, that term pre-exists even President Trump. And again, I agree with the skepticism of it. And I think because of the violence coming from Antifa, et cetera, there was a desire by this administration to tackle that head on. But anytime you start using the tools of the intelligence community against domestic targets, you run into some major issues legally, rightfully so. Again, I think this is something where we need a lot of people to be engaged and to take notice and to check what the government's doing and not trust the government.
If I may take that a step further, right-wing anti-Semites, anyone has been now included, not just Antifa. And Antifa is committing crimes, right? And a crime is a crime. And the motivation behind a crime should not matter because the crime matters.
It's like the idea of a hate crime doesn't actually exist.
Right, a hate crime. Right. So this idea that now this is thought policing, and you can define, the ADL defines anti-Semitism as hearing problematic comments about Israel. That clearly is not anti-Semitism, but because they can expand that definition, that gives them the right to survey and shut down legitimate criticism of the government. And so, again, you're right that the Biden administration used domestic terrorism, but the Trump administration uses it quite a lot in a way that I said, is quite worrying because we are free to feel however the F we like.
Exactly. And we've already seen the pro-Israel lobby basically say that what I'm saying right now, that we should question the amount of influence Israel has over our own government in terms of our foreign policy, that's anti-Semitism. And that falls under, hate speech, and that will limit your First Amendment. We've seen that push, in the public sphere, and then also like it's happening behind closed doors. And again, this goes back to just how much influence the Israeli lobby has over our country. And at the end of the day, like they're a foreign country. They have their own agendas. They also, for as similar to us as they feel, they do have a different way that they view things like free speech. And we just have to acknowledge that and separate ourselves from them and from their influence.
Yeah, it goes back to George W. Bush. I mean, this idea of war on domestic terrorism, right? And both parties love it because it takes away our freedoms, and that's exactly where we're moving. Catherine Austin Fitts just made a statement today, I believe, and she said Trump is basically finishing a decades-long plan to turn America into a mass surveillance police state. I want to ask you about that in a second, whether you see actual evidence for that inside the Trump administration to what she's saying. She thinks Trump was chosen by the New York Fed members, basically as bankers, to get this control grid. She's really outlined the control grid deeply when she's been on Tucker's show and others, but here she is on her own show. Listen.
So let's look at the control grid. There are three general baskets of what you need to do. The first is programmable money. The second is digital ID. To do programmable money, you require digital ID. And then the third is you need the hardware and the software infrastructure to do the social credit system and surveillance that you need to do those two things. And so you need all the data centers is the big one, but you also need a surveillance infrastructure and enforcement infrastructure to back it. So how do you persuade conservatives and people in the heartland to embrace building that infrastructure? The way you do it is you say, oh, we have election fraud, or, oh, we have an immigration problem, and so we need a digital ID to identify who everybody is so we can't have fraud. Now,
what do you think about that sort of Trojan horse approach, that's how the conservatives who live in the heartland and so forth, that's how you usher in this mass surveillance state? One, did you see this push for this mass surveillance inside the administration? I know you said that there's pushback on it, healthy debate and conversation, but was there a really concerted effort either by Jared Kushner, that kind of group? And two, do you agree with that approach, that's how you really get people to fall for it, the conservatives?
I mean, it's hard to argue for logic. What I saw from the inside, especially in the topic of like immigration, we know that we had an immigration crisis under Biden, and so a problem that we constantly had was, hey, the bookkeeping was so bad. How do we go and make sure we're targeting the right illegals, and how do we find the illegals? A big limitation. I know a lot of the MAGA base is frustrated with how low like a lot of the deportation numbers are. A problem we had was that we did have to follow civil liberties, and so I didn't see a concerted effort from my vantage point where I was. Now, again, these guys kind of knew who I was, so maybe I just didn't get invited to the meeting. But I saw I didn't see any concerted effort to do what she's describing. The way she lays it out, though, it's completely logical and it makes sense to me. I just didn't see any of that being done.
Even with like the Peter Thiel influence with J.D. Vance and the amounts of money on the Palantir side within the administration, like open meetings at the White House with these guys who are deeply involved in this plan. I find that to me is like number one troubling for me, this AI control of the United States and handing over our civil liberties to these people, to these technocratic clowns. It terrifies me. I mean, I'll be emotional about it, but you see these meetings and Peter Thiel coming to the White House or Alex Karp and these guys, and basically is Trump just a puppet for these people, these technocrats?
I wasn't privy to any of those meetings. I think with any kind of tool that we give the government, though, we do have to have oversight, and we have to basically have healthy skepticism. FISA always gets constantly debated, and FISA is one of those things that has been used to violate American civil liberties, FISA 702, et cetera. But at the end of the day, the government has has a lot of these powers. And so you have to have oversight of the government, and you actually have to hold people accountable. I think that's one of the biggest problems that we run into is we think Congress will pass a law that will prevent the NSA from spying on Americans, for instance, or something like that. And we think the law will be our savior when at the end of the day, unless we actually hold people accountable when they do abuse these very powerful tools that the American people have given our government, nothing will ever change. So I think the constant oversight and the vigilance from the American people, I think, is critical. But yeah, unfortunately, I didn't see any of those. I know those meetings happen just like you do, but I wasn't a part of any of those.
Can I just ask you before we let you go, we're going to circle back around to what you have done, the resignation, and what it cost your family, because the spotlight has got to be quite hot, and what that discussion probably looked like with you and your wife. Clayton and I have had something similar when we left mainstream media. It's painful and it's hard, but once you're through the looking glass, it's a little easier on the other side. And have you heard rumblings, without naming names, of people who said, I would do the same, but, or maybe I should, or something to that effect? Will we see more of this?
I don't know if we'll see more, but I've definitely heard, former colleagues, text me, call me, and say, hey, they would like to do the same thing. But at the end of the day, people have mortgages to pay and kids to feed, et cetera. So there's a lot of people who simply just can't legitimately keep the lights on and walk away from their job. So I'm blessed in that regard that my wife and I both have military pensions. We could kind of walk. But yeah, having the support from my wife, my parents, my extended family, that's been key. It was like you said, it was a tough decision to make, but once I made the decision, I actually felt really good, and I felt like a lot of clarity, more clarity than I had felt in several months. So it's definitely been a wild ride, but I'm confident I made the best decision.
I want to ask you sort of a UFO related question, and we've seen now 6 scientists that have gone missing. Several scientists, military personnel working in plasma physics, advanced heat-resistant materials, magnetism, doctors, director of MIT's Plasma Science Fusion Center. I know from sources that in Special Forces that this plasma technology was found accidentally after a downed UAP. That's how we obtained this advanced plasma technology. China has also scientists that have gone missing. Brandon Weichert reported earlier today, he said this isn't about aliens. I mean, that's where the tech came from initially. It's not about aliens, but China and the United States are playing this very dangerous game right now of basically missing each other's scientists. Can you talk about that on the U.S. side specifically? I know it sounds a little out there, but they're missing, they're gone, and they were working on this advanced technology, and China has now missing scientists as well who are also working on this advanced technology.
I don't have any insider knowledge about that. I mean, I think I was pretty narrowly focused on the Middle East, terrorism, those types of things. What I think Brandon said, though, is the most likely, to be honest. It's pretty well documented that countries will take out each other's key leaders, will try and take out the brains. Again, you saw the Israelis do this really effectively in Iran, about 10 years ago when they killed off a lot of the nuclear scientists. So I think what Brandon is talking about is probably closer to the truth than anything else. But honestly, unfortunately, I can't give you too much good insight on that case.
No, not even presidents of the United States are apparently on a need-to-know basis with this stuff. It's unbelievable. Joe, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. I know, some obviously some difficult questions here, but this is, at the heart of it is the most important, which is U.S. troops could be sitting ducks and cannon fodder right now at the heart of all of this. So that seems to be what we're barreling towards. So thank you for speaking out on that and your bravery on that and trying to prevent this mass slaughter of American forces doing the bidding of Israel in the Middle East. So at the heart of it, that's
and
this message.
Refer yourself to his X account. Call your representatives. Do what we can. We have these, we're the adults here. These young kids, their lives are in our hands collectively.
Yeah. Joe, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, man. Thank you, guys. Great to see you.
Thank you.
So Harry in our chat says, Joe is not perfect, but he's doing the best that he can. Other people saying, love Joe. Other people saying Joe's a psyop. There's a lot of discussion.
We literally asked him, but you're free to
Well, this was earlier. So here's a good question. GDNPD says, we know Iran is hitting the entire Middle East with drones, so how do you protect troops on or inside their border? All nonsense. All nonsense. Brad Gilbert says, anyone who says Chump is trying for we the people is either stupid or a psyop. Chump has always been playing against us. Chump is the psyop. Well, that's what Catherine Austin Fitz believes, that he's just being used as a puppet. He was installed because of these bankers. Referring to Mark Levin, Gary Hardy Incorporated says, how can anyone listen to someone who's never served? 17 million of us have served. Levin, shut up. That's how I feel about that guy.
I know. He's so weaselly and distasteful. I try. I'm like, what's he trying to say? Nope. I'm done. I can't take more than 3 minutes, him and Shapiro.
Proopifer says, Rumble Rant, I'd like to know where Mark Levin studied military tactics and strategy, or perhaps he has extensive combat experience to base his opinions on. Fix bayonets, Mark. Lead by example. Oh, I would love Mark to go out.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that old troll on a battlefield? Oh, my God. Coville said this about, I guess, Joe Kent. There's Flynn's guy, my favorite current psyop. Joe Kent, keep up the good work, sir. The people are awakening to how the United States was controlled for 100 years. What you, WWG1, WGA. I forget, I'm bad with the acronyms. What does that mean, Philip? Does anyone know what
What would...
No idea.
What was the acronym?
Let me put it back up on the screen. WWG1, WGA. What's good for? Does anyone know what that means?
I mean, I could Google it.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we could Google it.
Where one go all?
Okay.
I don't know.
All
Okay.
right.
That's just my guess.
I'm not sure with that one.
Jinham Stoneface says, don't have your troops in range. That's one way to avoid casualties. Exactly, which I've been saying for months. Get our men and women out of the freaking Middle East. We do not need 50,000 plus soldiers in the Middle East sitting ducks like cannon fodder. That the Biden administration admitted it was only a matter of time when they would be killed, when they would be attacked.
Right.
So, thoughts on the Joe Kent discussion?
Me?
Yes, you.
Or the chat.
You.
I mean, I quite like him. You know, it seems like he was willing to answer questions about his past funding. And I mean, I guess as a journalist, it doesn't matter what I like, right? But I accept his answers as valid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I appreciated his, hey, be skeptical. And I asked him about Whitney Webb's context and Catherine Austin Fitz. He said, I like Whitney and read her work and, and I'm glad that she's skeptical.
But, and again, he's allowing for this not to be the final answer on this. So maybe we will see something that we don't like and he's encouraging us to keep looking. Okay, that's valid, right? And I don't know, in this day and age, like David was saying, I need to get off X because I think I like these people, and then they say something and you're like, I don't like that person anymore. So we can't really attach to brands. Right now, we are aligned with Joe Kent on not being in the war with Iran, and that's where we've got to be right now, in the here and now.
Well, that's why I ended it that way, because at the heart of it, regardless of how you feel about Joe Kent and what other pieces of this story and all of it, I said at the end, Joe's message today was, no U.S. boots on the ground, stop this, stop it. And that to me trumps really everything else with this war right now.
Yeah.
But at the heart, it's worthwhile asking questions like, well, why now? Why did Joe just come out right now?
Sure.
Right before the war? Like, what about this surveillance state? It was fascinating to hear his take on inside the administration. There's a really big pushback from people that do not want us to lose our civil liberties.
Yeah. I was fascinated to hear that too. And pleasantly surprised. So let us know what you think of all of that.
All right, guys. Hey, we'll be back tomorrow with a great live show tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So please subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. It's very easy to do. Just follow us on X, follow us on Rumble, follow us on YouTube. And we'll be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Don't forget to grab our newsletter. It's totally free. If you go to redacted.inc, just put in your email address and you'll receive the newsletter first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee. You'll receive a welcome email. You just need to confirm that email. It goes to your spam folder or something. Because people sign up, they're like, I never received the newsletter. You have to confirm. So we'll send you a confirmation email. Just make sure it's not in your junk folder. And then you'll receive the newsletter tomorrow morning. So say final thoughts.
My final thoughts.
Big gulp, huh?
No war with Iran. Yeah, a war is based on a lie.
Yes.
It's bullshit. That's bullshit is my final.
Okay, that's a good final word.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
The war is bullshit.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Will you sum it up, Mr. Erudite?
War, what is it good for? Huh.
Absolutely nothing.
I'll say it again.
Oh,
Thank you,
good
guys.
God, y'all.
Okay, goodbye.
See you there. See ya. Bye, everybody. Well, don't you hate when people say, I told you so? Yeah, that's me, actually, because I did tell you. Sorry, but I told you that gold and silver were going to reap the benefits of excessive money printing, the Fed just printing money like crazy, overvalued markets, global unrest. It's here. It's happened. Gold and silver have both soared to all-time highs. So I hope you called our friends at Lear Capital and you bought some. If you didn't, trust me, it's not too late. Experts are predicting even higher prices ahead. And they get it. They know what's coming. Isn't it time, folks? Get yourself some gold and silver today. Call the best in the business. I personally use them. So does Natalie. We both do. And our kids do as well in their IRAs. Lear Capital, it's a free phone call. There's no obligation to purchase, just education information on protecting and growing your wealth with gold and silver. I'm sure there are many of you that have called and haven't purchased yet for whatever reason. Don't make the same mistake twice. Now is the time to get some gold shipped directly to you or shift some dollars in your retirement accounts over to physical gold and silver. It's easy to do. Natalie and I have done it for both, and I've been extremely satisfied with Lear's knowledge, their service, their prices. I urge you to call today and learn more. Call them, 1-800-613-3557, or go to LearRedacted.com, and you can receive up to $20,000 in free bonus medals with a qualified purchase.